Good morning. Hey, let's get started. I got two movies to talk about today. A little one, sort of little, and the big one. I'll talk first about the little one, is Stockholm, which is the latest film starring Ethan Hawke. Love Ethan Hawke. He takes such great roles. And this is directed by Canadian director Robert Boudreau, and he directed Ethan Hawke last year, the year before, in Born to Be Blue about Chet Baker. So they're back again. Now this is very interesting. This is a Swedish story with a North American treatment to it. And I'll talk about whether that works or not in a second. Well, maybe I'll talk about it right now. Here's the thing. If you have to explain the punchline of a joke, the joke's not funny. So the story with this movie, they say, the big the tagline for this film is it's based, and the movie starts off, first thing you see on the screen is based on an absurd but true event. If you have to tell us that it's absurd, it's not absurd. Or it's not as absurd as you think it is. I can get by if you tell me it's true. Fine, okay, it's true. Or based on a true event. But, based on a true event, you can stretch the truth quite a bit, which they do here. But to tell me it's absurd, to tell us it's absurd, don't tell us it's absurd. Let us decide what's absurd. So here we go. So the story is, it's August 1973, and Swedish-American Kai Hansen, who's also known as Lars Nystrom, and that's Ethan Hawke's character. He's out on parole, and he decides to rob Sweden's credit banken in, I'm going to mangle this word for sure, Normalmstorg. Normalmstorg. Hey, I got it. Normalmstorg Square in central Stockholm. And after taking 3 bank employees hostage, he insists that his childhood friend and ex-cellmate Gunnar Sorensen, played by Mark Strong, he was the bad guy in Shazam. He wants Gunnar to be released from jail and delivered to the bank as part of his negotiation. And police chief Mattsson, played by Christian Heyerdahl, who's Canadian, by the way, who was in Sicario Day of the Soldata. He agrees to Hansen's demand, but secretly makes a deal with Sorensen that he must bring the standoff to a safe conclusion in exchange for a reduced prison sentence. And as the hours become days, I think it takes place over about 6 days, the bank employees, and in particular Bianca Lind, played by Noomi Rapace, she starred in Unlocked, and she's most well known for the Swedish versions of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. She, in particular, irrationally begins to bond with her captor, and she supports him in his efforts to rob the bank and escape. And these events later give rise to the psychological term Stockholm Syndrome. So if you're wondering where Stockholm Syndrome came from, here it is. Well, here it sort of is, because this is the true story is where it came from, not this story. Now, interestingly, there's been no shortage of movies over the years that deal with Stockholm Syndrome, from King Kong, 1933. So long before the term Stockholm Syndrome was coined, King Kong, same thing. The captive feels for the captor. And Beauty and the Beast, 2017. So lots of films over the years about it. Surprisingly, though, this story, the original story, has never received an English language movie treatment until now. You can say, okay, Dog Day Afternoon, 1975 film with Al Pacino, directed by Sidney Lumet, fabulous film. It's there's a lot of similarities. It's about a bank robbery in Brooklyn. It comes pretty darn close because it deals with Stockholm Syndrome. But it's a different film. It's a different story altogether. There have been 2 Swedish films about this bank robbery. One is a dramatic account and the other is a documentary. Both came out in 2003, but this is the first time the Americans and the Canadians and the Americans have touched this story. Very surprising, because it happened 40 odd years ago. So I don't know why, but yeah. So here's the good thing. I think Hawke is great. He's great in everything he does. But he's great here because he puts a lot of he puts his heart into this film, and he just really ramps up the absurdity. But he's not Swedish. Neither is Mark Strong, for that matter. And so what happened is Boudreau, who also wrote the screenplay, he had to tweak the character's backstory to fit the actor. Because you have the real guy, I forget what his real name is. It's Jan Olsen, was Swedish. He was not American, and I don't think he ever lived in America. So you couldn't have Hawk pretend to be a Swedish. So he's a Swede. He's a Swede who grew up in America. So that's how they got around it. But to me, what happened was, because he had to, the director had to tweak the story. The screenwriter, just the writer, the director had to tweak the story to fit the actor. It loses its authenticity. So at this point, why call it Stockholm? Why even make it in Sweden? At this point, make it in Texas, for that matter. So I thought that was disappointing for me. Because at that point it becomes an inferior version of Dog Day Afternoon, much better film. So if their whole point is this is how Stockholm Syndrome came into being, make it in Sweden with a Swedish actor with a Swedish director. Don't do this. So, but as I said, Hawk really, he makes the film worth watching. The other problem is that I had with this film is that we don't come away understanding how Stockholm Syndrome happens. We get a brief glimpse into Bianca's marriage. It sort of offers up some clues into how she could fall for Hansen, but the story would have been better served if it had taken her point of view rather than us being a fly on the wall and watching the whole thing. So I thought, the script had the wrong point of view, with the wrong director, the wrong writer, the wrong location. Having said it, it's not a bad film. It's not a great film. It's not a bad film. If you're stuck on an airplane for a few hours, check it out. But not worth running to the cinema this week to go see it. It's okay. With any luck, someone will see this movie and say, we need to make an authentic version. We need to make a Swedish version with Swedish director and a Swedish actor. I don't know. And take it from her point of view. The real woman was not called Bianca. All the names were changed. So take it from the woman's point of view, the captive's point of view. So anyhow, to me, this was a disappointing film. Not a horrible film, disappointing film. And I don't like being told how I should feel. I don't like being said, wow, this is an absurd film. Let me decide what's absurd, okay? Don't tell me. All right. That's Stockholm. Next film is Rocketman. This came out a couple weeks ago, pretty well everywhere else except here. I don't know why they delayed it here. Probably because I think the distributor thought that X-Men Dark Phoenix would, because I think they came out the same week in other places. They probably thought X-Men would be the bigger film, and boy, were they wrong. So if you haven't seen it, or you don't know anything about it, this is the Elton John biopic. This is actually the Elton John musical biopic, because this is a, of course it's music, but it's a musical. It's a what's called a jukebox musical, because it's Elton John's greatest hits. Well, in his first part, I think they do I'm Still Standing, but pretty much up to Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. A lot of his biggest hits up to Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. I don't really remember if there's anything after that. So with this success, last year, Bohemian Rhapsody, everybody's been wondering how this film is going to be, because it stars Taron Egerton, who people would know from the Kingsman film. People may not have realized he can sing and he can dance. Doesn't sing that well, but you know what? He sings good enough. So people would wonder, could he do it? Or would this film pinkwash Elton John's gay lifestyle the way Bohemian Rhapsody pinkwashed Freddie Mercury's? That was the thing that really pissed me off about Bohemian Rhapsody. Or what about Elton John's drug use or bulimia or his sham marriage, all these things. Would this story cover those things, or would he, would they make him into a saint the way Bohemian Rhapsody did of Freddie Mercury? Well, to its credit, Rocketman deals with everything from Elton's difficult relationship with his father to his 50-year business relationship with his writing partner Bernie Taupin, played by Jamie Bell. Remember, he was the original Billy Elliot. But he's come back. He was in Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool last year. To his sexual relationship with his manager, John Reed, played by Richard Madden from TV's Bodyguard and, of course, Game of Thrones. To his alcohol and drug abuse, and a whole lot more. So the film is told in flashback format. It starts about 1990 when Elton joins a group therapy session because he is a drug addict. He is an alcoholic. He's got bulimia issues. He's got anger management issues. He's a mess. So I don't know if this is true, but he joins a group therapy session and then he starts talking about his family history. And the story begins back in 1956 when a young Reggie Dwight, played by the absolutely fabulous 9-year-old Matthew Ilsley, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. This is his first movie. Wonderful, really did a wonderful job. He impresses his mother Sheila, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, who does an amazing British accent. That's Ron Howard's daughter. And his grandmother Ivy, played by Gemma Jones, who's pretty much in every movie that requires a British grandmother these days, with his ability to play anything on the piano that he hears just once. And that's even before he's had one piano lesson. So he is a prodigy. I didn't know that about him. I just assumed he was very talented, but he really is a prodigy, or was a prodigy. Thanks to Ivy and not Sheila, very interesting. They take great pains to point out that it was due to his grandmother, not his mother. Reggie's musical talent is nurtured, and before long he's playing backup for other acts on stage. And this eventually leads him to meeting Taupin. I'm not going to get into how they met, but you can watch the movie. And the pair start creating a good chunk of the soundtrack to my generation, basically. The rest, as they say, is rock and roll history, with some time shifting allowed for dramatic license. That's all I'll talk about the story. In true Elton John style, the story is structured by a fantasy jukebox musical, as I said. So that, if you think about the Mamma Mia films, these are jukebox musicals. So, this is structured the same way. And I have to say, it's a bit of genius because that this film will be adapted for the stage and it won't be that hard to tweak it. So Elton's company, him and his husband David Furness, they're the producers of this film, or one of the producers of this film, and I'm sure that they thought about this. They said, let's make it that we can milk it. And they're going to milk it. Now, there are some wonderful show-stopping song and dance numbers throughout the film. So this is how it's different from Bohemian Rhapsody. It's not, strictly docudrama. It's a fantasy. And Edgerton shares the singing duties with the young Ilsley, how you pronounce his name, Jamie Bell, and Richard Madden. They all sing in this film. Very interesting. Now, as for Edgerton, as I said, he's not the greatest singer. He doesn't have Elton John's range or his power, but you know what? It didn't really matter to me. I was talking it over with some colleagues yesterday, and they said, well, you can't sing like Elton. I didn't care. You know what? He doesn't try to mimic the studio version of the songs. He sings them. He sings unplugged version, or he sings concert versions. He sings his interpretation of how Elton would interpret the songs if he were singing it unplugged or in concert. And that was fine. I thought that was great. To me, it gave the film some heart. So I was okay with the singing. Now, of course, everybody's going to compare this film to Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm going to compare it too. And, of course, the two stories have their similarities in that they share the same character of John Reed, the manager. In Bohemian Rhapsody, he was played by Aidan Gillen, who was Littlefinger in Game of Thrones. Here it's Richard Madden, who's also in Game of Thrones. So John Reed managed Queen for a few years in the 80s after he and Elton fell out. The two films also share the same director because Dexter Fletcher, who directed this film, he was brought in, if you remember, they had a big issue with Bryan Singer on Bohemian Rhapsody because of behavioral issues on the set and sexual allegations and whether he got fired or whatever, you know. So the last 2 weeks of filming, they brought in Dexter Fletcher to finish off the directing activities. Now, because of rules with Academy Award rules, actor rules, that Bryan Singer had to get, only one director can get credit. Bryan Singer got the credit, but Dexter Fletcher really finished the film. So that's another thing the two films have in common. And of course, you know, there's a whole issue. The two characters, the two singers lived at the same time. They're both British. They're both gay. They're, you know, larger than life. You know, a lot of similarities between the films. But other than that, the two films are very different because Rocketman paints a very unvarnished picture of Elton John's rise to stardom. We see all the warts here, and I liked it. You know, we see him snort coke a couple of times. He has a very steamy sex scene with Reed. It's like, whoa, you know, you don't see that on film, you know, in film very often. And it's a mainstream film, and I believe even the snorting coke. I don't think we've ever seen that on a mainstream film. So, you know, interesting. And you know, so we see, you know, Elton's life for what it was. Bohemian Rhapsody, we didn't. You know, we knew, you know, things were alluded to in Bohemian Rhapsody about Freddie Mercury's life, the coke abuse, the gay sex. We didn't see anything of it. It was all off screen or just alluded. You know, we saw with the coke, we saw it sort of sitting on the table, but we never saw Freddie take it. He was, you know, they put a halo over Freddie's head. Here, it's all there. And I think the difference is that Elton John's a survivor and Freddie unfortunately is not. So, you know, Elton, I'm sure, had a lot of say in what the story was. And he said, I want people to see what my life was for what it was. Whereas you had the keepers of the Freddie Mercury memory, i.e. Brian May and friends, they said, we do not want to trash Freddie's memory. We're going to make him into a saint. So they didn't want to show this. This is my feeling, anyway, and I have a feeling I'm right. Now, if I'm going to pick some nits here with Rocketman, the soundtrack, it follows his life. Okay, the order of the songs is a little, you know, it's tweaked to suit the narrative. The problem is with the song is that he didn't write them. Bernie Taupin wrote them. So, you know, it's highly doubtful that Taupin wrote the lyrics based on what was happening in Elton's life. You know, there's this, like the Tiny Dancer song. They sort of make it in the film that Elton's sort of coming up with this song in his head as, you know, he's watching events happen. He didn't write the song. Bernie Taupin wrote the song. You know, so and Bernie's never said that he wrote songs with you know, Elton's life in mind. You know, maybe he did. You know, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, he did not. You know, he has said with that one that was based on his own life state of mind. So, you know, that was, you know, okay, you know what? Not quite. And I think a lot of people won't pick up on that. I picked up on it. But, you know, ignoring that blunder, and it's actually a pretty big blunder. The film features plenty of fabulously outlandish costumes and glasses. You know, Elton loves to dress up, loves to shop. So I would have to say, you know, the costumes were great, the glasses were great. At the end, there is, at the closing credits, you know, here in Hong Kong, people jump up as soon as the closing credits come up on the screen. They're out the door. Do not jump. Do not go out the door. Stay and watch, because you're going to see there's a sequence where you see old pictures of Elton John wearing all these costumes. The costume designer really got it right with the costumes. He did really wear, you know, the glasses, the whole thing. I wonder if some of the glasses were really his, because they got to be one-offs. That would be interesting to find out. So do not leave during the credits. Stay for the credits. You should stay for the credits anyways, but certainly in this case, do it. Now, all in all, I'd have to say I was highly entertained by this film, and if we're going to compare it with Bohemian Rhapsody, I like this one better. So that's me. Who's next now? George Michael? I read the other day that Sophie Turner would like to play Boy George, if they made a Boy George biopic, and Boy George's like, hey, I'm up for that. I met Boy George, by the way. Very nice guy. Um, so we'll see who's next. I think there's also a David Bowie biopic in the works. So, more coming. Anyhow, Rocket Man, highly, highly enjoyable. Not at all like Bohemian Rhapsody. Very different film, but a good one. That's it. So enjoy it. Have a great weekend, a great week. See you next week.